Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome on our platform today. I'm Sudhir, and this is a panel discussion on, the challenges and the opportunities that exist in the solar industry for manufacturers. With an eminent set of panelists that we have for this discussion today, including Mr. Y.B. Gereti, additional GM at SECI. We have Mr. Arijit Mitra, DGM, DG Business, India, Sri Lanka for Longi. We have Mr. Bimal Jindal, Head Solar Development, L&T. We have Mr. Arul, ED Operations Ayana, and Jyoti Gulia, founder JMK Research Analytics. Some of the topping points or the discussion points that we hope we'll be able to cover in this particular discussion include, for example, how can we boost local manufacturing capacity of solar cells and modules, and in that entire context, where do we place the solar PLI scheme, which was recently announced by the government, and there's a lot of talk around that. Secondly, what exactly is the right duty structure, duty and tax structure for solar imports, and of course the issue of ALMM, which is being talked about now. Why there may be a need for expansion of the entire list and within the larger overall view of rapid capacity creation, and of course the issue about technology. How can we adopt the latest and global technology for the right kind of intervention in this sector with a view to manage high yields? And finally, of course, financing of solar, the need for innovative modes of funding for developers and manufacturers alike. Let me begin this discussion by asking Jyoti to set the entire context for this discussion in a way by talking about what exactly are the when you look at the entire landscape of domestic manufacturers in the solar sector, what are the typical and potential challenges that exist, and where are the main opportunities lie?
Thank you, Sudhir, for giving me this opportunity to share my opinion. I just wanted to share one slide with you, which gives you the context of how this market is growing, and what are the expansion plans for some of the leading players. So basically, this is just the compilation of some of the announcements and some of the leading players. What is the existing capacity they have, module manufacturing capacity, and what are the plans? The red bars, if you see, what are the plans that they have for next few years. So right now, the existing nameplate capacity for module manufacturers in India is around 18 gigawatt. Okay, and the proposed addition to this is, I think it's nearly 49 gigawatt is what's been proposed by a lot of players. And if you see the kind of players that are there are some existing players, leading players like Vikram, Vari, Adani, which are there. There are some new names, even project developers like Avada, for example, Renew Power. They are also venturing into this segment now. Other than that, you will see the PSUs like Coal India. They have also announced their huge plans. So with the announcements of these big conglomerates like Reliance, Jindal, etc., into this foray into this segment, and the entry of PSUs, I think the market is going to go leaps and bounds going ahead, with the 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel target that's set by the government. On an average, you need about 30 gigawatt of installed capacity is needed to achieve that target. Okay, and specifically solar, if I talk about this is the solar, so 25 to 30 gigawatt is the solar capacity that you need on an annual basis. And relying on imports for this huge capacity is, it makes no sense for India for a lot of reasons that are there, I think, which will be discussed in detail in our panel discussion. But I think the government intention is there. Government is also giving good enough subsidies and incentives, as well as it is also imposing certain regulation to promote the domestic manufacturing industry in India. Not only domestic players, even international players like First Solar and Cubic PV have also announced their plans to set up their facilities in India. Right now, the complete dependence is on China, but I think new markets are opening up, Malaysia, Vietnam, and now India, for example. So India is going to be a very important market for PV modules. But how the domestic manufacturers can compete with the Chinese counterparts, what level of exports market they can depend on. They cannot depend on only on the local market to survive for a long-term scenario. So all those things, and how quickly they adapt to the technology improvements with Chinese counterparts who have huge scales of economy and who have huge plans as well to expand. I think post-COVID, I think everyone is going big on their expansion plans. So I think these are some of the things that the domestic counterparts really need to look at and, plan to invest in the R&D to scale up to that technology level. I would just like to close with these overview remarks of mine, Sudhir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shruti. And thanks for sharing this slide with us. It basically correctly, absolutely properly captures the scene in the market at the moment. One obvious and natural question that comes to my mind the moment I look at this slide is that, and like you said, the market is going to have the entry of more and more players, and some of them are really large players, right? With that kind of competition coming in, prices always are, naturally speaking, prices should go down further. We already have prices, and people believe that it's rock bottom prices. Where do you see, prices will be with this kind of competition coming in 5 years from now? Do you think there's space for, and particularly with the kind of technology developments that are happening, do you think there's space for more correction, so to speak, in prices?
Yes, Sudhir. So for domestic manufacturers, I will take only the domestic manufacturers' perspective here because right now the government is BCD will be applicable from April onwards, and that's when domestic players will be able to compete with the Chinese counterpart. You cannot have a long-term certainty on those kind of policies and interventions from the government. But I think by the time these huge expansion plans will get into, the processes will be streamlined. There will be ancillary market which will develop for EVA, backshade glass and frames, which will all support and bring down the costs going forward. But having said that, there is a lot of importance for vertically integrated manufacturing facilities, because polysilicon is the main component which will drive down the prices. And even globally also, you will see for the first time this year we are seeing an upward trend in the module prices. That is because of global supply chain disruptions. So unless until there is a vertically integrated manufacturing facility is there, competing and getting aggressive, expecting further fall in these prices looks difficult as of now.
Thanks, Jyoti, for those initial comments. Let me turn to Mr. Reddy here. And, sir, when we look at the solar power manufacturing space in India for equipment, the first thing that comes to our mind is, of course, the need to rapidly, quickly boost domestic capacity because, like Jyoti was saying, there's a major reliance on China, etc. And we want to cut that. And the government's answer to that entire issue is solar PLI. So can you briefly explain the solar PLI scheme for us, for the benefit of our audience? What is its purpose? What are the salient features? And also why it could be effective in kind of boosting the local manufacturing capacity, both cells and modules?
Thank you very much for inviting me. And the PLI scheme, before going to PLI, I'd like to say one thing, that the Government of India is continuously, from the beginning of National Solar Mission Phase 1, we are trying to improve the domestic manufacturing. Initially, some capacity was reserved for domestic manufacturers, but it was challenged in WTI because of global trade practices. And there is globally some change in phenomena happened in that. Because of that, all the countries continued to levy on duties, and Government of India also came out with a safeguard duty, all these things. And one thing, at the end of the day, everyone, because if some country is giving some type of incentives, so we have to follow that. Okay, so today also I was seeing the US also is providing means like a PLI type of incentives for each component in the value chain of the solar. Okay, so Government of India also came out with this. It is PLI is having double meaning here. One is production, another is performance also. Okay, the scheme was written in a way that it is not only production. Okay, it is performance also. The production link is a simple thing. Okay, so whatever the quoted PLI amount that will be disbursed in 5 years, and they'll get based on their product. There is a formula. With the formula, and there are some factors attached to that formula. All the factors are linked to some performance parameters and also the local content, which is the again another dimension to the scheme actually. Without that, because simply by saying making make in India, let us say nowadays number of module companies are making modules, but we are importing each and everything. Okay, so wafer is getting imported, cell is getting imported, including frames. People are getting imported, except labor, everything is imported. So that should not be the content. Because of that, local content factor is also there. Okay, so it's a comprehensive policy to promote production capacities in the country, and also the performance. It should not be just like that. Production capacity means it's not like substandard capacity to be developed. So minimum efficiency is 19.5%. Okay, so below that, if the efficiency is below that, even though they win the PLI capacity, they'll not get anything. Okay, so the efficiency has to be given there, and also temperature coefficient parameter is there, that also need to be maintained. That is quite important for India, because being a hot country. So all the parameters, performance parameters were perfectly drafted, and the efficiency targets were given up to 21.5 till the 23. They can go up to 23, but 21.5 is the limit. Okay, that is one thing. So that is the efficiency type of parameter. So one has to continuously strive for improving the quality even after setting up the production unit. So that is very good move in the scheme. And the local content, Jyoti was saying that backsheet and EVA, all the manufacturers slowly coming up. There are a few manufacturers right now. So in that front also, because of this local content factor attached to the PLI scheme, okay, that will also come. Even glass we are importing. Okay, only one player is there in the country. Okay, so glass also, some people are proposing glass also to manufacture along with silicon. Okay, so all these things, what we believe is that by means maybe within 3 years or from now, India will have a completely different market. And one thing we need to understand, this is a semiconductor industry. Okay, so just like it is not like a simple mechanical industry or something. Just we set up the thing, it will things move on it somewhere. It's not, semiconductor is not like that. It is a continuous technology race. So we have to continue to have, all the companies must have the proper R&D backup to make the not only PLI targets, PLI factor targets, but also to sustain in the market. Okay, so if the efficiency is poor, you cannot sustain in the market. That is one thing. And the major factors behind the cost of the things are there. Even though you were also saying that financing is a big thing. Obviously, nowadays the financing is becoming cheaper now. That will not be a factor for the manufacturing in India right now. But one critical factor is the cost of the power for manufacturing. That again a thing. So that also need to be addressed. I think people are taking up with different measures. If that addresses it, so Indian products will be competitive in the market. I'm sure that beyond this also the manufacturing, even the 49 gigawatt is estimated, but complete value chain maybe around 20 gigawatt to 30 gigawatt system complete. Means all the from the silicon to cell module capacities will be there, and also the other technologies also coming like First Solar. They have already started working on the 3 gigawatt facility. Beyond the means apart from the PLI scheme, they are also getting. And government of India is also, the news is that I think they increase the PLI the quantum. Okay, so with that also I think more players will get included. So this is the salient features of the scheme. This is not a simple production link; it is performance linked also, which is a good thing actually. So with this, I'd like to conclude on this PLI scheme.
Mr. Reddy, thank you for briefing us on that. Can you also, because we're talking about incentives here, can you also tell us, let's say, what are the top two most important and the biggest incentives that are inbuilt in the scheme for manufacturers?
No, the top two incentives. The incentive is a simple one only. It is the how much you produce, you will get the. As you produce, you will get the amount, whatever the you quoted amount, the developer, the bidders quoted some amount that they will get in 5 years time. Okay, there are timelines also to achieve the production. Okay, that is one thing. That the other one is the performance. Linking performance is this thing. If someone gives means produces a better product, he will get the benefit early. And also one more is that the other factor is that it's a tapered incentive. Initial days, initial years, they'll get more. Okay, so
Okay.
that will help them to stabilize their whatever the initial problems during the any manufacturing industry. Initially, it will take some
Yeah.
time to stabilize. That is again one
Okay.
more factor actually.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Fine. You talked about technology, and rightly so. You're saying that it's not your, usual run-of-the-mill mechanical industry. It's going to be semiconductor based. So tech becomes very important. And when it comes to adopting the latest technology for solar power generation, I want to ask you, in your view, is India making the right moves? Are we making the right moves? In what way, modern technology intervention can create the kind of high yields that are going to be demanded from generators in years to come? In what way, technology intervention can play a role there? And are we making the right moves?
Actually, if you see, India is not a small country; it's a very big country. We have good quality manpower also. Okay, so we do have all the things. So if you see I'm from the solar industry. I did my thesis in solar. Okay, so if you see the researchers, at least 30% of the researchers are Indians in the solar industry also. Okay, so having quality manpower is not a problem in India. If we start this, because in my feeling, we have already delayed. This is the right time to venture into. The scheme is also defined in a beautiful way. So, for all, not only for this, not only for the solar, I believe that complete semiconductor industry will take a shape with this. Okay, so means all type of manpower we do have, all the means premier institutes are there. They can support the thing R&D. They can they can understand understand and adapt the technology very quickly, and they can improve the technology also. Okay, so in my view, it is the right move, right? Even though it is delayed, it is right move. So we have to be there because this much big country, we're still means I'm hearing in news that in some automobile industries they are facing a chips problem. Okay, so
Yeah.
this much market is there. So we should not be dependent on someone for small countries for the supply of electronics or something. So India can do in this. Uh, Whatever the earlier days, that is different. Now India is different. Okay, India is moving in all the sectors in a different pace. I hope in semiconductors, India will become means, one of the big player in future, maybe in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And of course, this reminds me of how, there's this argument which is very generally made about how, India may have missed the bus in, let's say, things like, telecom or et cetera, et cetera. And even to some extent, to a large extent in solar. But then, but going forward, there is reason to believe that we will catch up very quickly. But anyway, let me move on to Mr. Mitra now at this point. I want to understand from you. You represent a company which is a large global player in the solar space and a large module manufacturer. How does Longi Solar look at the entire opportunity of manufacturing that exists in India at the moment?
This is a very important question, and I believe in this forum I am representing the solar module manufacturer fraternity. So I would be talking on behalf of all the module manufacturers rather than just ourselves. When we discuss about opportunity, it's a mutual opportunity actually. We as a country, we're the third largest solar market in the world, and any solar market, if they want to become mature, they need manufacturing and the whole supply chain in their fold. So this is an opportunity for India as a solar industry as well, and for the manufacturers, it is an opportunity for them to diversify their risk. Presently, the solar manufacturing is fairly concentrated in one region, or rather in one country. If as a global manufacturer, we can diversify our risk by placing some of our manufacturing units in other country, it would be better for us, because any kind of disruption like power, glass, availability of polysilicon, any kind of supply chain issues uh, freight issues, all these issues can be mitigated, and the global supply chain will not get disrupted because of a regional problem. So I think it is a mutual opportunity for our industry and for a manufacturer like us. And we are looking at this in a very positive way. It's just that solar manufacturing, I'm not saying about solar module assembling, solar module manufacturing as a whole, as a complete 100% vertical integration, is a very capital intensive investment. So for to be very sure about the return on the investment, any company would like to see a stability and also see the market evolutions. So I think as a company and also as a fraternity, we would have to see it from both the way. I think it has to be mutual. So that's my view on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra, for making that comment. And so you're basically saying that it's a huge opportunity for manufacturers, not just from a market point of view, but also from the point of view of the need for manufacturers themselves to diversify risk by moving into newer markets, right?
Right.
And I'm sure you're talking about you're basically referring to the need to set up new factories or manufacturing facilities in India for a company like Longi, for example. So from that point of view, what do you think are typically the challenges in seeing India as an alternative manufacturing hub?
Definitely, there are challenges. Solar manufacturing as a 100% vertically integration of manufacturing need a lot of things. One of them is power. Power is almost a raw material of manufacturing solar module. I'm sure our eminent panelists, they all understand the module manufacturing process, but some of the attendees, if they don't understand, it starts from polysilicon, then we make wafers, and from wafers we make cell. After that, we assemble the cells into module. Now, since till cell manufacturing, this complete process is very, very power consuming, and it needs stable source of power. And that's where is basically the challenge is, because India's power cost is not that inexpensive compared to the countries who are doing well in solar module manufacturing. So this is one challenge. When it comes to solar module manufacturing, as Dr. Reddy was saying, that it has to be complete value chain. It cannot be, just one component manufacturing. Even it cannot be just cell manufacturing. We have to manufacture EVA, backsheet. We have to manufacture all the small components. How the mature manufacturer does it. So to do that, I think a lot of other investments are also needed. A lot of big infrastructural changes also needed, are transportation and solar. Some infrastructure for solar manufacturing hub is also required. Cost of capital is something that we can't do anything, but in India, our cost of capital is in the higher side. So that can be maybe compensated with some kind of incentives. So these are the gross challenges that we see. But at the same time, we have to see from a manufacturer angle that since the challenges, there are some challenges which can be overcome and which will overcome in future time. We were actually one of the first runner looking into India market. We acquired land in India, and then a lot of things was progress. But since now it is time, I think Longi as a company would definitely would like to see India as an alternative manufacturing hub of their manufacturing base.
Okay. So you're basically saying that it's a huge opportunity for manufacturers, but then what we need is stability, and I'm sure you're referring to policy side of things there. And you're saying that there are multiple challenges, including starting from power to infrastructure changes that are required for transport, and of course the high cost of capital that is there. If you can also briefly explain when you say power, what typically is the cost of power that is very broadly in percentage terms, if you can explain to us, and how big really is an issue is that?
Means as I said that exactly, I would not like to go into the nitty-gritty of the calculation, but in module manufacturing, the majority part of module actually lies in the cell manufacturing, and the whole process from polysilicon to cell manufacturing, especially polysilicon to wafer manufacturing, is a power guzzling process. So. Um, Along with polysilicon, power is also considered as a raw material in solar module manufacturing. So if the power costs are high, I would not go into the numbers, then it is very difficult to become competitive in solar module manufacturing.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Arjit. Let me move on to Arul at this point, and So I want to ask you, how do you look at, as an industry executive, how do you look at the overall? What is the overall view on the manufacturing landscape that we have for solar in India? From the point of view of how has policy evolved over a period of time, and where do we stand currently? And what typically are the factors that you would say are in favor of the kind of high-paced growth that we are expecting from this, to be delivered from this sector?
Thanks, Sudhir. See, actually, in fact, I moved from the United States to India in 2007 to set up large manufacturing capacities in the country, right? I think, and I've watched this space evolve from 2007 to 2021. And I think at 2007, in fact, I had visited China also. At the time, there was not so much of a gap between India and China. India could have caught up with China if the investments happened at that time frame, right? But it did not, unfortunately. Right. So having said that, see, I think in between, so when I've been on the other side, I started as an equipment provider. I was in a manufacturer. Now I'm a developer. So I see the entire chain. And one of the things what I see is Indian government has always made an effort. I think there was the MIP scheme where they had the subsidy for capital subsidy. Then we had the DCR. I think one of the successful efforts in the past was the DCR scheme where they had a separate tender for domestic capacity. And the intent was to slowly increase the percentage of that capacity and thereby build the manufacturing, right? But I think that ran into WTO rules, and I think that had to be scrapped. And then eventually then there was replaced with the CPSU scheme, and again that is relatively recent, which was and there was a 2-year gap between the CPSU and the DCR where I think the momentum was lost again. I think so. Finally, I believe and the 14 years now is the time I feel manufacturing is real. It's going to happen this time because there are multiple things that has happened. One is, I think there's always a tension between the developers and the manufacturers. Developers wanting to avail low prices and always saying something about the Indian manufacturing quality or capacity, and manufacturers also not appreciating the developers' perspective on wanting to meet the tariffs and getting the returns they projected, right? So I think that tension and that seesaw government was also caught between two people. And I think right now one of the things that's happened is, especially in the last year, there's been a huge increase in the Chinese prices. The freight costs have gone through the roof. It's gone from 1,000 to 10,000 also at some point of time. It's still quite high. So that has increased the predictability of the numbers. Second is the Chinese prices have gone up largely to some degree. There's a polysilicon capacity. Then there is this new child labor issue with the Zhejiang province. And there is certainly a global a geopolitical thing where India also wants to be less dependent on China to some degree, right? So I think there's multiple factors. All of them have come together. The demand is there. So the developers are also, my God, I wish I had a manufacturer in India who could have done this and I would have predictability of my returns. I think that realization, predictability of returns is critical, is something I think that's happened in a way. So I believe right now this is real. I think you see large players with the huge capital that can get it done, like RIL has entered it, JSW has entered it. So they are serious players. They have huge capital. They have experience in setting up large manufacturing facilities and to do it at a globally competitive cost structures. So I think the opportunity is real, and I am fairly certain, and having watched this space for the last 14 years, it is there now, and it's going to happen now.
Okay, so you're basically saying that opportunity is real and a lot of potential really exists here. So we have all the things, all the right things in place at the right time, right? We have policy intent that is there. We have players who are serious, and we have multiple factors, like you're saying. They've gone into creating this, from geopolitical factors to markets to tech, etc., etc. So with this entire setting now in place, what are the top things to keep in mind for a country like India when we look at this entire transition phase? What are some of the top things that we have to watch out for?
What I am also, I've been in this so closely watching it. So I think I'm concerned on the transition. I think, unfortunately, the entire supply chain cannot be based in India overnight. There is a process to get that supply chain in place. There's a time frame. And I think the best case scenario is 2 years from now, you'll have the supply chain entire, maybe 3 years, right? 3 years is more realistic. A best case, someone like RIL or JSW could pull it off in 2 years, like they're doing it in China, the entire polysilicon, right? Now, what is going to happen in this transition? How is China going to play this, right? Because initially we are still going to be dependent at the cell level. If I start next year, my dependence on cell in China is going to be high, right? Of course, the cell problem can be solved in 6 or 9 months. So 9 months down the line, I'll still be dependent on China for wafers, right? And 18 to 24 months down the line, I'll be still dependent on China for polysilicon. Of course, polysilicon has some other supply choices in Korea and Norway and US. But so I think this transition, so I think that this tension between developers and manufacturers in this phase will be quite high. And it's how the government stays consistently, right? I think it's very important for this sector to evolve and these capacities to come on board.
I'm tempted to ask you a lot about technology. Also, you're a technology man, but we'll do that in the second round. Before that, let me turn to Bimal here and ask him. Bimal, you've been smiling throughout. There's a lot that you want to share. But let me ask you. What is one thing that people haven't really touched about so far. In this entire discussion, which is financing, right? I think. Arijit perhaps slightly touched upon it, but then, how do you look at it as an industry executive, of course, when it comes to financing of utility scale solar projects, right? No doubt the costs are high, etc. So, but if you can, lay for us the entire landscape of financing, what are some of the key trends that you see emerging there, and how crucial a role will this aspect play in the entire growth story as it unfolds for solar manufacturing in India?
Thanks, Sudhir. No, I was just hearing our panelists. I think they give a pretty good, perspective over the industry. And financing definitely is one of the major element. If we look at typically, the funding makes a lot of impact on your selling price. In India, I will compare our country compared to other countries. Our financing costs are pretty high. If you go to Europe or US, the people may talk about 2-3%, 4-5%, depending on the countries they're working. And India, we talk about 8-9%. Even it goes to 10 now. We're talking under 8% also, right? So I think that is a massive cost, where you talk about a substantial debt coming from that, and it has major significance on your complete business plan. While we talk about on financing, so if we look at you're talking about manufacturing side, we need to understand that the business plan should be workable, right? So while we have a lot of prospect on the manufacturing side, there are a lot of new technologies are also coming up. So that is also, while they're giving opportunity, they're posing challenge also in terms of the performance. Like Dr. Reddy said, it's not only the production, it's a performance also, right? So when you claim you made your business model, the yield and the performance of module is going to make a lot of impact. That definitely drive your returns. So right now, if we talk about bifacial module, HJT technology, we are talking tandem technology, we are talking about a couple of other technologies also. The challenge is no one has seen the commercial scale even in China while we are talking about. And even in monopark, people have moved, the Chinese have moved to 540, India is still at 400. If you look at the ALMM, there's not a single manufacturer with 500 plus watt peak at the moment. So when you're going to set up this thing, so you need to have definitely some credentials to substantiate your claims. Otherwise, your equity and debt ratio gets a lot of impact. And if we look from the production output, also that also need to be seen. India typically have not gone to, although like I was just watching what Jyoti projected. She said nameplate capacity of 18 gigawatt. And Arul is there as a veteran. He spent a lot of time in manufacturing also. We all understand what the nameplate and what actual production capacity mean. Here we are talking about roughly 50 gigawatt of new plants going to come up. But whether they're going to be nameplate or actually produce, that also need to be seen. And that also impact your financing. So I love the PLI scheme. I will not speak, Dr. Reddy said so, but I think it's definitely based on the performance and production both. You can have a nameplate capacity of 4 gigawatt, but if you're producing 2 gigawatt, it's not going to work for you. So similarly, the financiers are also going to look into this aspect, how you're going to produce and how you're going to hit. The third part is going to be the market. Now, I will touch upon from the developer's perspective on the utility side, because that also impacts financing. Typically in India, whenever you try to purchase the modules for utility scale, the Indian manufacturers were not that credible from the non-recourse funding. Most of the financiers get apprehensions. They were not ready to fund the major module manufacturer also in India. And that was one of the another push which was driving procurement from China. Now we need to see, while I think all the steps are being taken in the positive direction, how that is going to help us to bring that bankability of the Indian modules. That question also yet to be answered. We have not seen any large scale installation of Indian modules, which is predominantly focused on CNI or rooftop segment. You will not see a major installation happen. And if you're talking about 280 gigawatt out of 450, now 500 may, let's say 300 plus gigawatt of installation by 2030, it means we are talking about 30 gigawatt plus installations every year. So that's a lot. And if it is going to be focused more on India, we need to see how that financing is going to happen for Indian manufacturers. Second, how they're going to ramp up the capacities to meet the demand. So all these challenges are going to be there, and we need to find a right answer to get a right financing. If the financing is not happening at the right cost, it will definitely going to make the price more unattractive, or it will not make you competitive. So this is a very critical aspect which need to be seen.
So when you're talking about bankability of Indian modules, right? You're saying that financing becomes an issue when you're typically dealing with even the large manufacturers based in India. You're referring to their performance related issues, right?
It's both. It's performance as well as the I would say longevity. Like the module is going to last for 25 years. The lenders are concerned on both sides. One, which is performance, like the degradation, the output, everything will come into picture. The second question will come into whether they will stay in the market for 25 years or not, right? To service and help the product. So that is another concern, which out of this 18 gigawatt, if you leave the major names, many of the players are so small. So we don't know whether they will continue, and if you buy, how that is going to be serviced, right? And the solar is a capex oriented project. If you are spending your capex and you're not going to get a surety that is going to last 25 years, it's going to make the project unviable. Module itself is costing 50-60% of the capex. I'm not going to the precise number, it may be plus minus, but just to give the perspective, it's a massive cost. And you're not emphasizing to change or replace this module at your own cost within a span of 25 years. I'm not talking 30-35 years, which many people are talking with glass modules. So that also is one of the another concern which is coming into picture.
Okay, fine, fair enough. Let me turn to Mr. Reddy, and Mr. Reddy, you've been smiling. Since Bimal made that comment about nameplate capacity, this reminds me of the same kind of discussion that used to happen many years ago in power sector, right? Nameplate versus the real operating capacity, etc. And that reminds me how how regulation becomes very, very important. But anyway, so first of all, do you want to respond to that first, of course? And secondly, If I were to ask you from SECI's point of view, what are the at a very overall broad level, if you could give us a bird's eye view of what are the different ways in which SECI is helping boost this entire capacity and even uptake of solar power in India, very broadly. So two things.
First, I'd like to slightly differ with Bimal's comment on bankability of Indian modules. The first reference I take from SECI's own project. Okay, it is there from past 5 years. Its performance is excellent. Okay, there's no degradation. Also, we're seeing that. Okay, it's very nice. It is through domestic manufactured, domestic modules only. And also we are implementing number of schemes where in the schemes also some domestic capacity was reserved in earlier schemes. We got projects built with Indian modules only. We are getting performance data from those projects also. They are pretty good. There is no problem. First, I'd like to clarify one thing here. Actually, in the module, cell will not degrade. Okay, only the packaging items. Okay, the EV and backsheet, those things only cause the problem in the module. I think Indian modules, quality-wise, I agree that the wattage is less, but longevity of the Indian module is very good. Okay, so I don't have any doubt on that. There might be some aberrations are there. Okay, it is true with the Chinese modules also, Indian modules. There are some bad players also in the market. But overall, Indian modules are very good, actually, quality-wise. But we do have the examples because we have some gigawatt database here. Okay, so with that, I'm saying that so bankability is not a problem for Indian modules. So that is one thing. Coming to the SECI's plans is that the others were also saying that annual target is now 30 gigawatt. Okay, internally, our target also is to at least minimum 10 gigawatt of tenders we have to release. So we have to contribute from SECI also that we do have our internal plans for the next 5 years like that. That is one thing. And as the investor also, SECI is coming into this sector for installation of solar projects. So we recently got around 1,200 megawatt capacity on CPSU scheme also. So we are developing our own projects. Recently we added some projects. And we are planning to have our own capacities also because we are not doing simply plain vanilla projects. We are not doing because we believe that the simple deployment of the solar projects will not survive much, 2-3 years only. Okay, so all the solar projects they must accompany with some component of storage also. Okay, in the installation. Then only the sustenance will be there because the renewable capacity increases in the market, grid level issues comes. And also we are parallelly working on various other issues also like transmission network also to be there. We have to plan. We are working with various entities and we are planning that. We are planning to optimize that also. So we are taking these developments, 450 gigawatt or 500 gigawatt in a holistic way. And you all might be knowing that we are coming out with different types of tenders. Okay, so different combination of tenders, independent storage tenders, like that. We are doing all the things. The main aim is to penetration of renewables. And one more thing, what we most of the discussions we says that so far it is obligation. Now it should be the choice. Okay, the RE is the cheapest power available in the market now. It should be the choice, and only thing is that how we have to address the quality of the power. So that we are addressing. So with this, I think we believe that achieving 30 gigawatt per annum is not a big deal because we are seeing that you might have been observed that in last 3-4 months the market rates of power was skyrocketing actually. So no thermal capacities are coming from where the growth India is growing also. From where we meet the demand. Okay, so we have to have these capacities. I don't have any doubt, especially from SECI side, we don't have any doubt. We are all geared up for this 500 gigawatt achievement.
So, Sudhir, I just want to,
please go ahead.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Reddy, when we talk about the bankability of, so I know that I personally use the DCR modules, like Arul said, and I was trying to work with all the major guys. If we look at our landscape of 18 gigawatt, there are many players. And trust me, as a utility scale developer, when we were talking to the banker, even for the big guys, there were a lot of reluctance when we talk about the non-recourse funding. Even most of the Indian manufacturers did not have the DNVGL report for their manufacturing units until some time back. It's a Bloomberg published data, you can check, and I don't want to say that, but I think Arul can pitch in. But my personal experience with the lenders, and I'm not talking for today. I think now the momentum is different. The government is supporting, SECI is putting a lot of effort, MNR is driving the things. So definitely it's going to happen. But I'm talking about there's certain challenges which is still to be focus. The bankability for the Indian modules, while is bringing traction because of the policies, it will still have some challenges with the lenders. It's not like plain vanilla. Like if you Longi is sitting, I will not name others, and with no offense to other big Chinese guys, if I go and say that I want to buy from Longi to a lender versus I will say any big name in India, the lender will say Longi, no second thought, right? But if I go with the other guys, they will definitely like to do more diligence. They will like to understand more, and there are some challenges I faced in the past. I've spoken to the individual manufacturers personally. That's
but
my.
It also it's also something that
understand.
depends from. So it's completely experience based, right?
My finance guy,
got
scared when I used to say, Sudhir, that I want to get you this guy. Let's do some testing for this scale, and not for a gigawatt scale or a few hundred megawatt scale. He said, let's park it for some time. Let's close the main financing. Then we'll come back to that.
Anyway,
and I'm not saying it's going to be there. The trend is changing. The people are definitely moving in a right direction. But we need to answer, like, example,
the trend has moved significantly. And like I said, it's completely experience based. But Bimal, let me move on to
sure.
this conversation. Because we hardly have 10-15 minutes to wrap up, and there are many people who want to come in. Coming to so Mr. Reddy has talked about a lot of important things. Now let's move on to Mr. Mitra again. And when you were last commenting upon the market, you were saying that in India there are many challenges that exist, from power to infrastructure to cost of capital, etc. First of all, in what ways we can address those challenges, and secondly, if you can also briefly comment upon the kind of duty structure that we have, and where do you see it headed, in days to come? What's the right way to move ahead with taxes and duties for a country like India?
When it comes to challenges, there can be a number of things which can be done to mitigate the challenges. But I would I would like to discuss broad-based things. I would like to take an example of automobile industry of India. So I was in school when it started blooming, but now it is a success story. In automobile industry, we have seen the industry's challenges was streamlined only when the market was open for global players, and manufacturing started, and everything I think streamlined. So challenges will be there. Challenges are continually, it's a continuous process. There will be challenges. Always there will be challenges, and we'll have to overcome them on the way. But as automobile industry, I think nobody calls Suzuki as a Japanese car manufacturer, or nobody calls Hyundai as a Korean car manufacturer. As a country, we will have to remove those quote unquote things that domestic module manufacturer and Chinese module manufacturer. So we'll have to remove that mindset first. We will have to create an environment where global manufacturers can be Indian, can be other countries' manufacturers. They can come in India and make their modules, and they can also export in other countries. Where Aisha Motor, they can set up a manufacturing facility in US, and Suzuki can have a manufacturing facility in Detroit. So why cannot Vikram Solar can set up a manufacturing in somewhere in US? So it has to be a conducive environment where all manufacturers are solar module manufacturers. So I think to streamline challenges, we'll have to start with remove the tagline. domestic manufacturer and Chinese manufacturer. So fortunately and unfortunately, China as a country, they could able to create an environment which was a pro for manufacturing of solar, and we can do that as well. So now, as Vimal sir said, that this is the right time, and Arun sir also, I'll echo them. This is the right time, and we'll have to take our learnings from the success story. I think we can see the automobile industry, along with the domestic manufacturing incentivization. We can also look into how we can create environments so that the international players can freely come in this country and start manufacturing and share the technology, because technology is not in assembling modules. It's there in making the wafers. So not many Indian company has that technology with them. So technology have to be developed. There are a lot of scope of R&D. Our Indian techs are showing their excellence in all the segment. Why not in solar industry as well? So I think to in a macro sense, to mitigate challenges, we'll have to start with creating an inclusive, conducive environment of manufacturing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that really mature comment, Arjit. A very important thing to ponder over. And you are giving auto industry's example also. Let me tell you one example that I witnessed long ago. Even in the power sector, right? There is a lot of, from an equipment point of view, non-Indian equipment, and one of the reasons why it was being taken up is because of the lack of standardization that we had in the Indian equipment, right? And that's one thing that did not exist. And the equipment from outside, the manufacturers from outside, they were able to utilize that opportunity. So the point being that we have to move away from these traditional mindsets. Okay, that's a very fair point to ponder over. Arun, let me turn to you. You understand technology of solar manufacturing, and you have witnessed not just in India, globally, how that technology change has happened. Can you summarize for us what exactly, from a tech point of view, what exactly are the current trends, and where is the market headed? And in that entire movement, where do you see India placed?
Thanks, Sudhir. I think it's a tough question. So I think, see, the technology for solar has been fairly static, I would say, for the last 10, 15 years, because we were at multi-crystalline silicon wafers with almost the same structure and so on, right? I think, but in the last 2, 3 years, the transition has been fairly rapid. There were two streams of transition. One is on the size of the wafers. The size of the wafers, which was around 154, 155 millimeter, it's evolved to 166 and then now moved to 182 millimeter and 210 millimeter, right? So what this size transition, and this size transition has been very rapid to the extent that it's very difficult to get a 155 millimeter wafer now. So the implication of this is whatever capacity we have in terms of cell or module to date, I think there's some capacity that has come in the last 6 months, which is compatible with 182 and 210. But those pretty much all that capacity is obsolete, because it's not just upgrading the technology, it's completely replacing the platform, because you need to handle a different wafer size. So I do see that whatever capacity that's going to get set up is going to be compatible with 182 and 210. I think to that extent that 15 gigawatt is gone pretty much, right? So it's almost starting with a clean slate. And if I take today, maybe 1 or 2 gigawatt will be there in this capacity range. And we need to build the remaining 20, even in the modules, even as simple as modules, right? But I do see that being stable, and I see 182 and 210 to continue for a while. I don't see a jump to 300 that fast. I think 155 was there for decades. So I think this too will be there. The next transition that has happened, which to the credit of Longji, I met the president also. So I think they have really driven the transition from multi-crystalline to monocrystalline. I think they single-handedly drove that effort, and I think and with Zhongyan coming in, I think this has happened in a pace that nobody anticipated. So the efficiencies have gone up, but now monocrystalline, P-type monocrystalline bifacials, I think these are the become the standard cells which are in mass production today. Right now, what is the future? Of course, there are multiple paths for future, but the two common ones people talk about are TOPCon and HJT, heterojunction and TOPCon. But both are based on N-type monocrystalline cells. That's a different type of doping vis-a-vis what the P-type monocrystalline does, right? So now the challenge for India is going to be 3 years down the line when this capacity is going to come out. Which technology should the companies be investing in? Should they do P-type mono or N-type mono? I think that's the question they have to answer. The second question they have to answer is, will they go for a TOPCon? TOPCon is the evolution of the monoPERC. So most of the cell equipment can be used largely in the TOPCon, also with some additional structures, additional equipment, right? So whether they go for a TOPCon or a HJT, heterojunction, I think that's the other question they have to answer. But one thing I think people have to reflect on, I think those are setting up large capacities, is if there was a recent UNSW study on the material usage. For example, TOPCon uses a lot of silver. The HJT uses indium. So I think, and these are commodities that are in short supply globally. And they were projecting the approach that may win over is a tandem junction. So I think maybe one thing I think the Indian manufacturers can think through when they're looking at R&D is maybe you go with the P-type mono bifacial, which is the current one, and then move to a tandem junction. That's add one more layer, which can be an add-on to the existing infrastructure. I see that is probably the more least resistance path and maybe more clear path, because the other paths have a fair amount of disruptions in terms of the type of wafers also. So I hope this is one thought I have, but the cost structures of tandem junctions are still high. Yes, if you want to get into a United States market or the developed countries market where efficiencies are key, especially the rooftop markets, I think this tandem junctions have probably give you the highest efficiencies, and definitely the market will be there internationally. Whether you can be competitive in the Indian utility scale market, which is one of the most competitive, right, with the tandem, that is a difficult question. I think the monoPERC bifacial definitely is going to be there. But I think that's something the manufacturers have to think through on how they will make a roadmap to see how they will develop the technology that's globally competitive, as well as address the Indian market. I think that will be the challenge.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Arun, for making that comment. Let me turn to Jyoti once again. And so two things that I want to ask you, Jyoti, at this point. First is that, I want to bring in the issue about ALMM, right, which is currently being debated a lot. If you can, maybe comment upon that. How do you look at that entire issue, and the industry is talking about it. I think there have been some representation to the government also, the ministry. How do you look at that issue? And if possible, based on that and other things that we have discussed so far, how do you view the domestic PV manufacturing market in India evolve over the next few years?
So let me just give my broad comments. I've heard other panelists that have talked, and so few things that are there, and we have been speaking to a lot of domestic manufacturers as well as developers. And I think we also have heard the same thing. The developers are pro about the Indian modules and all. They are not concerned about the quality. In fact, they are all the more eager because they would have easier warranty claims and service agreements. So those are the things that developers would, of course, if that setup, that big scale setup happens in India, developers will have that advantage that is there. The other thing is, to evolve this market, I think the major investment is to go into the R&D. If we see all the global suppliers that are there, global manufacturers that are there, they are spending huge amounts of their profits only on the R&D, be it Longi, Jinko, or Ryzen. You can see that. But I think that kind of investments now need. See, assembling a module is an easy task, but manufacturing cell and wafer, that is where expertise is needed. So a right kind of technology partner investment in R&D is what will make this opportunity a huge success going forward, I would say. Other thing is, on a there should be, from a government side, I think there are enough incentives and other thing, but I think overall the whole ecosystem needs to be built in tandem with each other. We are seeing a lot of restrictions around rooftop net metering. Then there are open access policy restrictions that are there. So, certain kind of those small industries should not be neglected at this point, and, whole system should be developed, keeping that in mind. And a long-term policy certainty should be there for this whole industry to divide. Now, coming on to the point on ALMM, Sudhir, that you are saying, yes, there are issues, there are delays, and I think Arijit would be better person to talk about that, because this is what we have heard. There are delays from a lot of suppliers based out of China. They are not able to get their factories vetted by any player. So I think what we have heard is there are some third-party agencies that are being looped in by the government now to conduct those site visits. And but I think that is still in plan phase. So the only thing that I think industry is expecting is that the deadline for ALM, which was there, it will be postponed. I think by when ALM certified module should be there, that is highly likely that date will be postponed. And I think more comments, I think Arijit can add on few things, what exactly are the problems they are facing.
Yeah, okay. Arijit, do you want to comment upon ALM?
Yeah, in ALM, we have completed all our formalities, payments, and everything is done. Now it is just a matter of that the travel is restricted as of now, and they have not been able to inspect. So I'm sure in that case, I'm sure India government will look into this matter and see it is more holistically, because not giving ALM is not because of the manufacturers who have not applied. Who have applied, they are, I think they should get their fair chance. And if they don't get it, then I think a lot of big projects will get affected. Maybe smaller projects will not get affected, but larger projects will get affected. Mainly because they will not get funding for their projects if they want to procure modules from the domestic or ALM approved manufacturers. So that's a big issue. I'm sure India government, they will consider into that matter, or they will arrange some alternative arrangement to inspect the plants and everything. So I think it should be done.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Arjit. And the last comment before we wrap up this entire discussion, Bimal, I want to take your comments on ALM. As an industry executive, how do you look at this entire issue, and where do you think is the way ahead? If we can very briefly comment upon that. Yeah.
No, thanks, Sudhir. I think Jyoti and Arijit tried to touch upon something. I think it's a good initiative from the developer perspective. Because many of the, I'm not talking about us. I was very particular to do the factory audits before we purchase, but many of the people are not able to audit the factories, and they purchase the module, and it's going to last for 25 years. I think it was one of the big concern, which government is trying to look into and then try to help it. Only challenge which I see at the moment, one, because of COVID, the timelines are going to become slightly tricky. Second, the kind of expansion plan which you're talking in India, I'm not even talking China. We need to see how it can support the our 30 gigawatt yearly target, right? So the capacities also need to be certified. The production, it need a lot of manpower and massive work. I think, most of the panelists will agree to that. It's not going to be one day job, and each factory need to be certified. It's not like a manufacturer is getting certified. So if you have, so it is limiting your flexibility also. Like let's say Longi is having 35 gigawatt or plus capacity now. If they have 3 factories certified, 4th is not certified, but they're already booked, they cannot give it from another factory. So that is going to be another thing which we need to see. Another opportunity I will say is there on the BIS side also. I see BIS, I agree it's more on the product side, but there might be some overlap between ALM and BIS. It should not become that first the factory need to be ALM certified, and then there are a couple of months for BIS. I think that one aspect, if it can be taken care, it can help to optimize the duration and expedite the process. There are some challenges we need to see. I'm really worried the 10th April, if that date is going to get stick. for all the future bid out project, how the projects are going to get financed if they're not having enough capacity, which is ALMM approved. It's going to be one serious concern, which definitely need to be looked into.
Fine, thank you. Thanks for that final comment, Bimal. This is such an important topic, and there's so many issues to be discussed. Time, that we can just go on and on, but then time is always short, and time may not be on our side, so we have to wrap it up now. First of all, thanks to all the panelists for this absolutely wonderful discussion, for so many important points that we have discussed so far, and there are so many key takeaways. So when Jyoti started the discussion, she upfront, set the context by putting in place the kind of capacity addition plans that we have and who are the different players in the market. And she has also talked about, how will the market evolve over the next few years based on different, imponderables that are there. Mr. Reddy has talked about, my own key takeaways, production with performance, talking about solar PLI. And he's also saying, so he has given these important one-liners for us to remember: from obligation to choice, right? That's the movement of the solar industry. He has also talked about how, we have to understand that, it's a tech-driven industry, semiconductor-based, so which is very, very different from the routine industry setups. And he has given us an idea of the kind of capacity addition that we are planning in India for years to come. How it's going to be tapered incentive for manufacturers, and hopefully India will move ahead very quickly. Arijit has talked about how there's a huge opportunity for manufacturers to, and it should be looked at from the point of view of diversification of risk by moving into new markets, right, for these companies. Of course, that comes with the caveat that stability has to be there in terms of policy. And we should be able to quickly address some of the key challenges like power or transport or cost of capital, of course. And he has also, in his final comments, talked about very, very important to do away with traditional mindsets, Indian versus Chinese, etc., giving examples of the auto industry, something worth remembering. Of course, Arul has talked a lot about technology, and thanks Arul for that, for giving us all that information on the key trends in the technology space. And he's also saying that that right intent is there currently, right? And but then a lot of different multiple factors will, they've come together, but then they will go a long way in determining where is this headed, right? The key thing to remember, according to him, is that this transition, means until the full supply chain is in place, we'll have to remember, we'll have to keep in mind the input material cost from China, etc. But then very, very important comments. And finally, Mr. Jindal, he has talked about high cost of funding as compared to other countries that we have. He's talked about the issue of nameplate capacity versus field capacity, the issue of bankability of Indian modules, which has been debated here. And he's also saying that LMM is fine, but then we have to keep in mind two things: COVID and the large capacity addition plans that we have. How is that kind of target going to be impacted with things like LMM in place? So these things have to go in tandem. Overall, an absolutely fantastic discussion, and my thanks to all of you for joining in. And I really hope to be able to host all of you again on this platform. So thank you, and please carry on. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sudhir.
Thank you, Sudhir. Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure.